Hey now folks, today we're going to take a look at Trains and Stations from WizKids and designer Eric Lang. And if you don't know who Eric Lang is, you will, because the guy is blowing up. He's a very prolific designer. He did a lot of collectible card games and living card games, but now he's done more and more board games. He did Chaos Euro, which is fantastic. Chaos Ball, which is fantastic. He co-designed Quarriors and Marvel Dice Masters. He has some really awesome things coming down, like Arcadia Quest, and there's like some sort of weird Cthulhu type game called The Others. I think he's the one that has a hand in that's coming soon that I can't wait for. So he's already in like my top 5 game designers. He might even be at the top, but the guy is just prolific and awesome. And Trains and Stations is a game that I think kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people. It came out at Gen Con last year. And it has the same kind of cool engraved dice like Quarriors did, but the gameplay is not a lot like that. This is actually, think King of Tokyo by way of train rail building. That's pretty much what it is. You're rolling dice, which are going to give you either money or different potential resources, or the ability to produce different buildings out on the map, which would give you those resources, or what you're most likely going to use them for are little trains, which are going to use to that represent like tracks that you put between different cities in order to meet objectives. So think of it as like a little bit of Ticket to Ride with a little bit of King of Tokyo, because you get to roll the dice Yahtzee style and keep the ones that you like, all in like a very small time frame, about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe a little more depending on the group if you're new with them and such. But so a light dice chucking game is how I would best describe this. Do I like it? Let's go ahead and do a brief overview of the game. Then we're going to come back, tell you what I think. Okay, I'm going to give you a brief overview of Trains and Stations. This is a competitive game for 3 to 5 players where the goal is to have the most victory points by the end of the game. That is represented by when the 2 piles of victory point cards have been completely depleted, the 1s and the 5s. Then that triggers the end round. Whoever has the conductor's hat token, you're going to finish out that whole round until it goes back to that person, and then the game ends so that everyone has an equal amount of turns. The theme of the game is kind of generic. It's kind of like Old West 1800s. You're like a businessman who's trying to set up hotels, ranches, mines, and profit from the frontier, whatever. It's kind of generic in that regard. So here's the basic setup. You'll have the board with all the different routes and cities, which I'll get to in a minute. You have your victory point card stacks. You have power cards, of which everyone starts out with 2. Different types of resources keyed into the different types of buildings. So cattle, workers, ore, and then eventually, maybe, it doesn't happen in every game, you may upgrade to other types of resources, including food, gold, and silver. Everyone starts off with the same set of 8 dice in their color. They'll start off with 2 power cards and 3 victory point cards, because you might actually lose victory points. 3 coins, which are going to be used to re-roll dice if you want to, and a set of player buildings in their color as well. You'll choose whoever's going to be the first player, and then the game is going to begin. Now, on your turn, the first thing you do is gather 5 of your dice. Even if you have more dice available, you only get to roll 5, but you're going to be placing these out on the board, which means that you will eventually use the other dice that you have not yet rolled. You'll roll the dice, and at that point, you have an option. You can either keep everything that you have out there, or you can choose to spend a coin to re-roll as many of the dice as you like. You can spend as many coins as you want to do this. Coins are worth nothing at the end of the game, so you might as well do it if you really want something else. And then you'll resolve your dice. You can also choose to save some of the dice that you rolled for the next turn if you want to, if you can gain no benefit from them now, but you might want to gain their benefit later. Now, the most important type face of the die are the trains. Now, there's 2 types of train faces. There's just the normal train face, then there's the locked train face. Now, these are used on the game board in the same way, but if you ever roll 3 dice, locked train dice on your turn, your workers go on strike. You immediately need to lose 3 victory points. Remember how I said you might lose those that you start off with. And then your turn is over. You're going to have to resolve your dice and move on. You can't re-roll them even if you wanted to, but you still get to place your locked train dice out onto the board. When you're placing train dice, it's as simple as putting them out on the empty spaces on the board. Really, you either have to start next to a city or next to a train that you've ever built. So you need to start from a city, and then you can keep building off of trains that you've already built. Now, It's very unlikely that you can do this all in one shot, but it is possible that you'll be able to complete a route just on your turn. But more than likely, you'll have to have other players complete your routes for you or complete the routes that other people have started. The reason you want to do this is a couple of different things. First off, in your power cards, there's two different types of cards that are in here. One are goods. These are just good cards that you hold on to till the end of the game. The benefit of them is that you can add them together with the actual good cards that you've gained, and whoever has the majority of one of those types of cards gains that victory point total at the end. Friendly ties if more than one player is tied. So if I had the most cattle, I'd get 6 points and so on. That's one type of card that's in the power card deck. The other type are, well, if you played Ticket to Ride, I would call these tickets. Essentially, you're trying to make these routes between these specific cities, Miami and Boston in this case, and Detroit and San Antonio. If you have this card in hand or on the table, and you complete that specific route, then you're going to immediately flip that card over and you can gain those points. If you forget, you forget, and you'll have to wait until that route is completed again. Flip the card over, take the points from the stack, you got it. But the other way has to do with the stuff on the board. Every city has a little bonus icon. I know you can't see it from here. I do apologize for that. But it has little bonus icons that will tell you what your bonus is, depending on which cities you've connected. So if I connected Miami to New York here, there's a little card symbol. That means I get to take power cards from the stack. If I connected the... with New York, there's a little cube here that represents a bonus die. A bonus die gets to go into my pool of dice for the next turn that I can roll. And you can actually save bonus dice from turn to turn if you want until you use them, so you don't have to use them right away on your turn. There's also other symbols. There's ones that just have a 1 or a 2, which represents victory points that you immediately take. And actually, that's it. And Boston actually doesn't have anything. Now, the other thing that is on the dice are buildings. Well, actually, I should mention that there's also money that you can get, which is very simply just taking $2 from the bank if you want it. And remember, money is what you use to re-roll. But the other symbols are building faces. So you have hotel, cattle ranch, and mine. If you roll and keep 3 of these of a particular building on your turn when you resolve your dice, you immediately get to build the appropriate building out on the board. Now, this has to follow specific rules. Every city has 2 or 3 open blue spots where buildings can go. So you can put your building wherever you want, but you cannot put a second building in a city until every city has at least 1 building. And again, you can't put a third city out anywhere until every city has 2, and so on. The benefit of these buildings are for getting these good cards. If you complete a route where you have, where any player has these buildings, those players on the completed route are immediately going to get the appropriate goods card. So this game is a little wonky in the way that you may complete a route, but anyone that has buildings out there on the seas that are completed, or anyone else who has put train dice in that route, are also going to gain bonuses. The person who gains the bonuses for the cities, like the victory points of the cards or the bonus die, is actually the person who has the most trains in that route. But even if you complete that route, you may be giving those bonus cards to someone else if they have more trains there. So that's kind of how this game works, is that you may be, whatever you're doing may benefit someone else, and you don't have a lot of control over that, except that you just may not want to complete that at this time. And other than that, I explained the locked train dice already. And that's really it as far as rolling and resolving the dice. They call that making a delivery, by the way, when you complete a route. Now, the other thing having to do with the good cards I mentioned before is upgrading the cards. Whenever one of these stacks runs out, at the end of the turn, you're actually going to replace it with the next upgraded stack of cards. So cattle immediately goes to food. So if the cattle stack runs out, the player can replace it with the food card, and that's another type of good that you can vie for points. If that runs out, then it goes to gold, and so on. For the workers, you actually have your choice of food or silver, and then it upgrades to gold. This may never happen in your game. I've played several games where that just did not happen even once, let alone multiple times, but it is there. And when that happens, each player also can immediately, what's called upgrade speculation, where they can take cards. They can take cards from their supply and immediately trade them in 2 for 1 for whatever new good is coming out at their discretion. They all do it simultaneously, flip over, remove the old goods from the game, and get the new ones, whether it's gold, food, or silver. And that's the game, really. It's very simple. You're just going around, rolling dice, Yahtzee style, trying to complete your routes, trying to get the bonuses, trying to get points from the goods. Just trying not to go on strike. And remember, money's worth nothing at the end of the game. Whoever has the most points once the victory point stacks runs out and everyone completes that final round is the winner. Well, let's get to my final thoughts. There are a lot of elements of Trains and Stations that I really enjoy. I think the game looks great. I like the dice. People have complained about the small board, but it works for what it is. I mean, this is supposed to be a light game, and I think that works very well. I like the little buildings that you put out. I love that dice rolling mechanic, which we're starting to see more and more now. More games are doing it, but it's still fun, and it still works very well. I think it's handled in a little more of a unique way here because you have the danger of the locked trains, which adds some tension to it, and also the fact that you may or may not focus on different things. Obviously, you're always going to want rails, the train dice, because you're trying to actually complete your objectives, but at the same time, you can go for the resource cards, and therefore you want to make more buildings, which can be a little bit tougher to do. So there is that. I like the aspect of how you actually build the rails and how you're trying to complete them in such a certain way that you don't want your opponents to complete them early for you, because then they're going to get bonuses too, but also they may screw up your attempt to connect very specific spots on the board, because every time that you complete it, the dice are wiped away. So that can be very, very tough, and it does add some kind of tension to the game. So that stuff is cool, and I like the idea of getting the different resources and having the most of them. It's all kind of basic stuff, and it works. It's very neat, and that works. So why don't I like this game? It sounds like I was just, writing this thing a love letter, but I don't like it. It's tough for me to put it into words, but I'll try my best. I've played this about 5 times now. It's a game that I'll play it. I was very eager to get it. I'll play it. I was like, okay. Put it on the shelf, forget about it for some months, try it again. I'm like, okay. And I keep hoping that every time I play it, there's going to be more to it, but there never is. It's never quite the exciting experience that it lives up to. What it all comes down to is that there's just nothing really refreshing, innovative, or unique about it. Like I said, the dice work in kind of a cool way, but we've seen that before, and we've seen the putting out rails before, and while it all seems kind of neat at first, like they're doing something different, it's really not. I think that's part of the issue. The other issue is that the game has a very weird arc when you play it as far as start to finish. It feels like you're always working towards something, and you're building your buildings, you're collecting these resource cards, like, all right, like you're in this race to get this stuff. And right when it really hits its apex, it ends. Like, it ends too soon. And it's tough for me to say that, because I think that if the game went on too much longer, then it would wear out its welcome for sure. But it ends just a bit too soon for you to actually be invested in what's going on and to actually make a plan and make a strategy and hope that it comes to fruition. So when I played this like the 4th and 5th times, I'm like, okay, knowing that the game was going to end very, very quickly, it kind of changed what I was going to do. And I'm like, well, forget the buildings. I mean, I need to get that stuff, but it's here's the key thing here. There's a very large part of the rules dedicated to the fact that when a resource runs out, you go through this weird bidding process, and like it gets replaced with another type of resource, and now you're competing for that. I can't even explain it to you very well, because I played the game 5 times and it never came up. It might have come up like the second time that we played, right at the end. It's such a weird thing. It's a huge part of the game, but the game ends so quickly that it just never happens. I'm sure that other people have had a different experience, maybe people who prolong the game a bit, but the way that we played it, it's just... It just doesn't work. I don't know what it is about it. The game is over too soon, but it should... But if it was much longer, it wouldn't be fun, and there's just nothing fresh and unique about it. That's weird. I can't say that it's a bad game. It's not a terrible game by any means. It's okay. But compared to other stuff that I have and other games that I've played, it just doesn't hold up. It's just not a very exciting experience. I think that's largely why it has been forgotten, why it hasn't been a huge hit, why people just kind of forgotten about it in the wake of all these other bigger, grandiose games and more addictive games that Eric Lang has designed. So I think this is one that's destined to be forgotten and no one's really going to miss, but which is sad because there were some neat ideas here, but just nothing very exciting. My name is Nick. This has been Board Game Brawl, and I'm reminding you to get out there and game every day in every way. Take care.